We're now that it's been tested over a decade, is quite accurate. We help them find future leaders, we find future mentors, this is the shell issue, we can find problem solvers, those are a different type of person, and then we find what we might call high potentials or rising stars. They're like what I would call the stem cells. You put them next to somebody and they morph into them. But they have unusual qualities, but I don't really understand really what they are, but they're definitely radioactively connected in ways that we're still researching. So this, after a decade of this work was also identified by the supply chain with take-home with the United States Army, because we had a nonlinear issue with Iraq in the theater of war, but we still had linear supply chains that we had to overcome. But you can't have a linear supply chain serving nonlinear needs. I'm sorry, it just does not compute. Or if it does compute, it will lead to delays, and sometimes those delays cost lives. So in this organization, we had 14 different organizations in what we call a Life Cycle Management Command, LCMC, where nobody's in charge. They all had to collaborate, and there was no real playbook for collaboration. So what we did is we found out who the key connectors were in each one of these organizations, which you're taking a look at right now. This is 20,000 people that you're actually looking at that are scaled down. And what we did is we found who the key connectors were, we brought them into the room, we made them part of the transition team or the LCMC teams. They knew some of the solutions. The people actually have some of the solutions. It's just that you've got to get the right people in the room, and sometimes they're the unusual suspects. So I know you don't want to look at this so early in the morning, but this is raw data. The important point is that now, and here's a zooming in to looking at, for instance, 3 teams, 2 of them are co-located. This is an innovation triad here, and 2 of them had been previously co-located, hence all the blue lines. But the 2 teams that aren't connected at all didn't trust one another, and what they would do is they would go around to the other team to get information. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I don't trust her or him, I'm going to go around and talk to Steve over here. Well, that's inefficient, and also it can lead to information going off track. So what we did is we found who the key connectors were, we brought them together, and they came up with the solution for how to bridge, because it's wonderful if you can co-locate people, but you can't co-locate people all the time. So that's not the only answer. There have to be other solutions as well. The third example of this now is part of my pro bono work, and that is I get called upon from different communities saying we want to create a stronger sense of civic engagement. I was first contacted by Philadelphia in 2006, and actually Malcolm Gladwell recommended me for that study. And then in 2008, we did another similar study in Louisville. We're currently running studies in Tucson, Portland, and now going back to the Bluegrass region in Lexington and taking a look at this. And the same process of finding out who these key connectors are, who are the unusual suspects, we're doing across the United States. Now what's interesting for me, and may be of interest to you, is that each one of these studies is in a different region of the United States. The Northeast, the Southeast, the Southwest, and the Northwest. Each one of these people represent, they come from the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, government, academia. My question is, are they really interesting, unique people that are there because of the events or whatever happened in that particular area, or are there common leadership qualities that bind these people together, that make them get things done? Because you see, these connectors are informal leaders. They are the perfect complement and partner to the formal leaders that we already have in our organizations. So a future project, or future research project, is to study these people once all of these different studies are completed to find out if there is a common DNA that characterizes these collaborators, these innovators. Because maybe if we can find that out, we can redesign the way leadership is actually taught in high schools and in colleges and in universities. We've already done some of that by developing a new leadership curriculum that's now being taught at the universities in the Philadelphia area. We asked them a number of questions, which I won't go into so much here, but let me just give you kind of the animation. People get nominated. We cull the nominations because you can stuff a cyber ballot box, and we can see that. And we clean and cull the data. We get more people. We see the different areas and different economic regions. And then finally, we ask them how they're connected with each other. So we start to build the links, and then voila, here we come up with an example of a network that is the not-for-profit, the private, and the government academic. Now you can see that the academia is a little sparsely connected, can't you? So is the government a little bit here. And when I showed this data back to the 101 key connectors, these are the 100, these are the super connectors. When I showed this data to them, the room got real quiet. I didn't have to say anything because they could see what was going on. So it got quiet, and then people started whispering, and then people started chuckling, and then people started laughing. And then finally a professor, a very renowned, famous professor, stood up and said, "You're absolutely right, Dr. Stevenson. We don't trust one another, and we need to change that." So the nice thing about this is that it helps people realize, oh, I didn't know. Let me see what I can fix that. I can fix it. But if you can't see it, you can't fix it. So what I thought I would say is that we need to be able to collaborate. We're celebrating today, the fact that through collaboration we were able to take care of the source behind some destruction 10 years ago. But the challenge continues. This is Katrina, where we have all these different agencies working together, well-intentioned, beautiful people wanting to come together to cooperate and help. And let me tell you, they come up with wonderful solutions. They do. But in many instances, like I saw in Haiti, like I saw in Katrina, well-intentioned people often bump into each other, and it can lead to unintended consequences. You can see it here in the Gulf oil disaster. We have examples of hierarchical, mismanaged projects all over the world. That's why I think it's a 21st century challenge, and that's why I have this map here. I understand command and control. We all do. We're getting better and smarter because of technology and understanding how we're connected in these trusted networks. But it's not about that either. It's about the intelligent integration of social and human capital in these hierarchical systems that represents the challenge that we have to solve for. And not everything is that way, but the big issues are education, healthcare, government. So, in closing, these are just a couple of places where corporate applications, over time, I've done a number of these, like over 500. It's taken me 30 years to build a process that now takes only 30 days. So what I'd like to do is that I promised I wouldn't show any formulas. So these are different applications, HR applications. What I'd like to do is to leave you with this message of a cultural calculus. In a hierarchy, in a command and control system, they are designed, they're beautifully, elegantly designed, such that one person does the work of one, because that is how hierarchies are designed. And in a network, you get the leverage effect, where it's exponential at least. It's an exponential lift. 2 people do the work of 4. So in a hierarchy, 1 person does the work of 1, and in a network, 2 people do the work of 4. But in a bureaucracy, my friends, 4 people do the work of 1/2. And you do not need a degree to appreciate that cultural calculus. And that's what we need to fix. So I invite you for more details. We'll dig down deeper. We can only do so much in the brief time that we have this morning, but I'll be presenting more of this in deeper detail from 3:30 to 5 o'clock, so I'm hawking my session, and it's called Cultural Shift or Drift. Most of us try to produce change, and then what happens is that, like a viscous liquid, cultures drift back to where we began. But if you really want to produce a sustainable shift, then I hope to see you at 3:30 to 5 this afternoon. Thank you very much.
We have time for 2 questions, so
Yes.
First of all, we have one piece of good news for you. We turned out social network monitoring last June, and by September we
Yay, thank you.
Here's my question.
Okay.
Our CEO talked about discovering the secret network that runs this company. He said 2 months ago or more than we have in the past 10 years. A remarkable number of stories about that statement talked about it in terms of, oh my gosh, the CEO intends to be monitoring this company's internal communication, finding out all that. Do you have any pushback when you try to introduce social network measurement for people who think that this is snooping?
Yeah, I do. And here's the way about positioning. Excellent. I'm so glad to know this is happening, but it's not without some pitfalls and some ethical ramifications. Here's why. What you're doing is that you're trying to understand how people trust one another. So you don't care who does whom. Excuse me, I'm from Texas. You care about how they work. And that's part of the, excuse me, the employment contract. So if you're working in my organization, your informal ways of working are as key to me as your formal ways of working. So that's number one. So you set it out there, that's the bar. Then when I worked like with the NIH, he said, we're going to make everything transparent because the fact of the matter is, he's got your MBTIs out there, that's not a state secret. Why would you think your informal networks are a state secret? Unless, of course, you're maybe trying to defraud us. So you kind of tease folks and you try to, with a sense of humor, get them to realize, wait a minute, this is really about how we work informally with one another. So that is as key as the formal. So getting people to look dispassionately and disinterestedly at the informal in the same way they look at the organizational chart, I think is one of the barriers that we're going to have to overcome. Then the other thing is that these are the early stages. This is why I'm giving keynotes, because it's innovative. I'm working with organizations now, and I want to go work with what's the organization for the human resources in the government? I forget the name of it now, but yeah, OPM. I'm going to them and also to SHRM on the private sector, because Karen Stevenson, who's that? We need a leadership organization to establish the methods around this and to standardize them. We need the unified weights and measures here so that everybody understands what's going on. So one of the things I've been pushing for a long time is to get to find a caretaker organization that has the leadership to get behind this and to do it. And that's why I was wrong 5 years ago when I said everyone would be doing it. But I'm hoping 5 years from now, everyone will be.
Apart from your algorithm for placeholders, do you have an algorithm for figurehead?
Oh, well,
The network says,
yeah.
The network says are completely invisible, so the hierarchy says they're very important.
Yeah, there's lots of, there's about 50 different algorithms.
One more question. If there are no more questions, we have the great privilege of having Karen be with us all day today, so we can accost her on the floor.
Oh yeah, I'll stick around. I know you guys are going to go to a break, but I'll stick around if there's any questions that you want to ask me privately.
All right, guys, before you leave, here's a few little announcements that I've got to make, because otherwise you won't know where you're going.